everyone. Notice of the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing the same in the Omaha World Herald, OPPD Outlets newsletter, OPPD.com, and social media, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on January 10th, 2025. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection on OPPD.com and in this meeting room. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder to those joining via WebEx, please mute your microphone to reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You are in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. Our agenda for today's meeting is as follows. We will conduct a closed session this morning to discuss two topics: new generation and transmission update and personnel update. We will conclude this morning's closed session no later than 9:50 a.m. in order to open the WebEx meeting to allow the public and OPPD staff to join. We will begin public session at approximately 10 a.m. and receive reports from each committee. Director Moody, do we have a motion to go into closed session?
We sure do. I move that the board go into closed session at this time, 9:01 a.m. to discuss two topics. The first, new generation and transmission update, and the second, a personnel update. With respect to the new generation and transmission update, a closed session is necessary for the protection of the public interest because the discussion involves sensitive utility infrastructure information, confidential cost information, regulatory matters relating to generation resources, and potential resource acquisition strategies, disclosure of which would disadvantage the district in future negotiations with potential contractors. With respect to the personnel update, a closed session is necessary for prevention of needless injury to the reputation of an individual, and such individual has not requested a public meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Director Butler?
Yes.
Director Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Director Core?
Yes.
Director Howard?
Yes.
Director Hudson?
Yes.
Director Moody?
Yes.
Spurgeon?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes. The motion to go into closed session has passed. This closed session will be limited to two topics: new generation and transmission update and personnel update. No votes or other board action will be taken. Motion and a second is required to reconvene in open session.
Second.
Director Butler?
Yes.
Director Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Director Core?
Yes.
Director Howard?
Yes.
Director Hudson?
Yes.
Director Moody?
Yes.
Director Spurgeon?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes. The motion to come out of closed session at 10:13 a.m. is carried. The closed session was limited to discussing two topics: new generation and transmission update and personnel update. No vote or other board action was taken. Notice the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing the same in the Omaha World Herald, OPPD Outlets newsletter, OPPD.com, and social media, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on January 10th, 2025. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder to those joining via WebEx, please mute your microphone to reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You are in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. We will take public comment at the end of today's meeting, as well as at the board meeting on Thursday, January 16th, 2025, which will be conducted in person at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center. It will begin at 5:00 p.m. The public may attend in person or remotely via WebEx by going to OPPD.com. Joining me today in person are my fellow board members, Amanda Bogner, Mike Kavanaugh, Matt Core, Sarah Howard, Craig Moody, and Mary Spurgeon. I would also like to welcome and introduce Director John Hudson to the board. John, would you like a chance to introduce yourself to everyone here and online?
Well, good morning, and it's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to represent Subdivision 7 here on the board. I look forward to bringing my experience in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as a district commander to bear here on the board over the next 6 years, as well as my experience now in the private sector as an engineer with a firm, a national engineering firm. So thank you, and I look forward to working with the board in the years ahead.
Great, thanks very much. Welcome. We also have members of our executive leadership team, Steve Bruckner, our general counsel with the Fraser Stryker Law Firm, and OPPD staff. Additionally, we currently have 31 attendees in the meeting, consisting of OPPD employees and members of the public. Today, we will hear the following committee reports: the Governance Committee report from Director Bogner, the Finance Committee report from Director Spurgeon, the Customer and Public Engagement Committee report from Director Howard, and the Systems Management and Nuclear Oversight Committee report from Director Moody. Javier Fernandez will now give the safety briefing.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask Josh Clark to do the safety briefing here physically for those in the room.
Good morning, everyone. As typical, we'll start off with a quick safety briefing. If you're not feeling well, hopefully you're not here today, but you're at home getting rest and hydration. We want to make sure you're at your best, so please take care of yourselves. Also be aware of any exits as well as first aid or fire suppression materials. We have a lot of that outside of the room. We also have multiple exits that we would use in the case of an emergency. Don't have to worry about sheltering in place today, but if we were needing to evacuate, I would ask everyone to evacuate to the parking lot just to the north of us. That's where we would convene and gather and make sure everyone's safe. Also be aware of any environmental hazards. It is winter. We have seen some slick conditions. Luckily, we don't have that to worry about, but we do have severe cold coming in and out of our areas. So please be aware of that and have your vehicles ready for that as well. So make sure you have necessary equipment in your vehicles to make sure that you stay safe. If anyone needs any assistance during the meeting, please let someone from OPPD know. We have staff outside as well as inside the room that can provide assistance to you. And then finally, if anybody needs anything, again, please make sure that you let us know, and we have plenty of materials for you. And we also have plenty of staff that can help in any way. So thank you very much and have a great meeting.
Thank you, Josh. I'm going to move quickly to the psychological safety element. Just a reminder, really what we're trying to aim here with psychological safety is having an environment where people feel comfortable raising their hand, asking questions, challenging assumptions, sometimes, especially in the field, stopping work. If something doesn't feel right, doesn't look right, doesn't feel safe, it really doesn't matter what your title is in the organization, where you are in the organization. Having a culture where you feel comfortable saying, hey, wait a minute, let's stop work that doesn't feel safe, or I have a question. I would like to hear more about where you're coming from. I'm seeking to understand, etc. So that's a little bit of what we're promoting with psychological safety. You have 5 elements in here that we believe are pillars for psychological safety. Typically over the course of the year, we touch on each one of these 5, but given Director Hudson is your first meeting here, I wanted to just talk about what the element of psychological safety being just as important as physical safety. On the cybersecurity front, very important if you see something, say something also with malicious links and QR codes that bad actors continue to put in front of us, our employees. Very, very important for us to keep aware of that. And before you click on any link, make sure that you know the person who's sending it. Make sure if you can hover over the link, know that it is legitimate and you feel comfortable clicking on it. In this day and age, we're clicking through things too fast, and sometimes we could make a mistake. A simple mistake could have very costly consequences. Our safety focus for January slips through some falls. This can occur any time of the year, but especially now when the roads are icy. Still, we still have some ice patches from the snowstorm we had a couple of weeks ago, where the sun really hasn't shone and melted that snow. Just be careful with that. Winter weather hazards, whether you're at work, at home, or on the road, be sure to take the extra time to make sure that you have the warm weather gear, you have your tools and equipment in your vehicles, if you have blankets in your car. Oftentimes, if you're running out to the store and you don't have the right equipment, I always challenge people, say, what happens if you break down? Would you be able to walk a couple of blocks to get help? Even if you're just going to the grocery store and back, just always have that mindset. And cold weather fire safety. Take extra precautions. We have people who not in the office, those are prohibited, but when you have space heaters, small space heaters, whether home or in other places, just make sure that you're taking precautions and using those according to the manufacturer's instructions. And that concludes my safety briefing.
Great, thanks very much. The first committee today is the Governance Committee. Director Buckner.
All right, thank you. The Governance Committee did not meet in December, so I do not have a chair's report to share. So we'll move on to our first item here for discussion, the Governance Committee Charter Revision. I will ask Scott Bush to walk us through this.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
The revision that's being proposed is fairly straightforward. Currently, there's two committees, the Finance Committee and the Governance Committee, that prescribe who should serve as its chair. The Finance Committee chair should be the treasurer of the board officers, and the Governance Committee should be the former chair of the board. In reviewing that, the Governance Committee is proposing that requirement for the Governance Committee to be the former chair of the board be removed. It provides a little bit more flexibility and opportunity for development of board members to serve in that capacity, and really follows best practice in terms of removing any limitations for folks to serve if they don't necessarily hold a prescribed reason for doing so. Go to the red line here, you can see it's simply removing that last sentence, and that makes it more consistent, by the way, with Systems Committee and with the Customer and Public Engagement Committee.
Does it change all the membership of the committee? Or
It does not. It does not. The membership of the committee would remain the same. So the membership is the current board chair, the preceding board chair, the current vice chair, and the chair of the Finance Committee.
I think another important element here is with the intention of having 2-year terms. These adds the flexibility that I don't think we thought about it when we talked about the 2-year term intention. Having these flexibility helps with permanency and consistency.
Well, that and in the event, although it's not occurred yet, that the chair is not, if the current chair is not reelected, if they're up for election, and not able to serve as the chair of the governance committee the following 2 years, that it addresses that issue, which we've not run into.
And we kept poking at it just a little bit in committee, and other opportunities kept leaning to this red line versus keeping it the way that it was.
So will the board chair then choose the committee chair? Just like he does the other.
Correct. It's similar to the way that they do for the other committees. That's correct. I would say the other committees except for finance.
Right.
Okay.
Since finance is prescribed as the treasurer, which does make sense.
Which is selected by board vote
Right.
Mhm.
later
It's
on
all
in
of
the
it's
day for
selected.
Thursday, yes.
And ultimately, to your point, Director Kavanaugh, the chair, while they appoint, it is always with the board approval. The chair does appoint the chair of the board does appoint the chair of the committees, but it is with the board approval that happens. Excellent.
All right, thank you. The next item, then we'll roll right into election of board officers. So Director Williams, can you walk us through the slate?
Great. On the screen, you can see a recommended list of positions. Chair being Director Core, the Vice Chair being Director Spurgeon, Secretary being Director Bogner, and the Treasurer being Director Moody. I think that everyone has been notified and discussed and is willing to serve in these capacities. So unless there are any thoughts, comments, concerns, I think this is the anticipated recommended action item for Thursday. It would be an action item for board vote. Anyone whose name is on the list have any comments to share, or does anyone else have any comments?
I'm fine with the selections there, but just as long as we do have to keep it open at the board meeting to take nominations, correct? If there would be any other nominations, correct? We can't just, we can't just appoint him.
I'm going to defer to Scott. Well, it's not appointed. It
Not
is
appoint, you know.
an action item for board to vote at the time. Scott, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. The past 2 years, and I will also call upon our friend Steve Bruckner. For the past 2 years, it's passed this way. It's been presented as a resolution to include this slate, and then the board has voted upon it. Prior years, Director Kavanaugh, I'm sure what you're referring to, where the nominations came forward one by one. This way, it's been presented as a slate, and the board has approved, I think, at least the past 2 years.
And either way works.
I think we've done this slate for a little longer than the past 2 years.
Has it been 3?
I think it has been 3.
Not a big deal, I guess, but just as long as it doesn't appear that the governance committee is handpicking who's going to be in these positions. You know what I'm saying? It can look a little funny.
Right.
I mean, and I'm fine with these folks, no doubt about that. I don't mean to imply that at all, but just so we don't get the impression that it's
Yeah, and I think that's super valid.
Same.
Yeah, and I'm recalling maybe 4 or 5 years ago where a director who was not on the list, as we had kind of done the behind the scenes, like, okay, what makes the most sense? They had self-nominated themselves, right? So like there are instances where that can occur and we need to make sure we have the ability to allow for as much. I think to your point, though, that I think what you're naming for me is something that we need to ensure that this is not on the consent agenda. So when it comes time to talk about it, you can summarize the process that we went through and all of that, so it doesn't just like slide through and it's not the thing that,
and definitely should be on the consent.
not on the consent, you mean?
Correct. It should not be on
Yeah.
consent. yes.
Okay. That way we can bring everything to light so that the public understands what the process was.
Sounds good. And I guess I'll flag that will be discussed at the end of the agenda today. So when we get there, by default, all action items start on the consent agenda and then someone can mention, but we'll be aware that someone is going to mention at the end of today to move this item from consent to discussion for Thursday.
Excellent. And then I would offer too that it follows normal parliamentary procedures. So if at any point in time a director opted to make or amendments, that process still stays open. So it does allow for it as the open and free discussion with regards to what's being proposed. The notion being here that does perhaps streamline that process a little bit in terms of making it more efficient. Did you hear that? That look on your face. Yeah, I was hoping it was from that. Thank you.
And Scott, appreciate the streamlining. Other locations have had complex logistics in selecting leadership. So I'm glad that we have a mechanism that gets us to the answer.
50 some.
No specifics, but complicated.
That is the hope. We hope that, yeah.
Great.
All right, the next item is then the board standing committee assignments. So this was one of the things that we streamlined a couple years ago. Instead of electing officers in January and assigning committees in February, we've condensed them to be both actions that we take in January here. Would you like to add anything more to this particular slate?
Nope, I think this complies with the update that is anticipated for the governance committee charter by specifically selecting a governance chair in this action item. Also of note, the risk committee is listed here, and the risk committee charter does specify membership in the risk committee. There is an asterisk on this slide indicating that the Customer and Public Engagement Committee Chair, Dr. Howard, is designating Dr. Bogner in her place for the risk committee. Just want to make sure that everybody sees that that is a new committee to meet quarterly per the charter that we updated last year, created last year, and that we are assigning the committee here with an appointment of Director Bogner in place of Director Howard. Does anyone have any thoughts, comments, concerns about this?
I would simply offer that the charter does allow for such designation.
Right. And then similar to the last item.
And one point of clarification on the risk committee, just for the record. The appointment of chair of the risk committee is not necessarily just the customer and public engagement. It could be any of the committees. In this case, it happens to be that. Since it's a new committee. Wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Great, and thank you to everyone who is the chair to be willing to serve in that capacity. Appreciate that. As we mentioned on the last item, this is anticipated to be listed at the end of today as a consent agenda item, but if anybody would like to remove from the consent agenda for discussion on Thursday, we can discuss that at the end of today to make sure we have the agenda set appropriately for Thursday.
Thank you. All right, the next item and our last item for the governance committee is the standing committee annual reports for 2024. So this, we've looked in the rearview mirror. Each committee has gone through everything that they've accomplished and creates these annual reports to document that.
Excellent, thank you. And really, this is in alignment with the charters. Each committee has a charter that prescribes that this type of work should be done, and that happens now in January. The review of the annual report for the committee. I will say the reflection of each of the committees was the enormous amount of work that has been done on behalf of the district over the past 12 months. And it is really a good opportunity for everyone to see and to understand the nature of that work and how it complies with the overall charter. I would encourage anyone who is interested to take a look at that and understand how very busy the standing committees are in service to the district. So the governance committee is the committee that's to recommend that the board accept these, and this would be a consent agenda item at this moment, similar to minutes, would be the anticipation. Any questions? Excellent. Thank you.
All right, and with that, the governance committee rests.
Great, thanks very much. Next up is the Customer and Public Engagement Committee with Director Howard.
All right, the Customer and Public Engagement Committee met on January 6th. We covered a variety of topics, but the two that we brought to you today are the product and services update and the legislative and regulatory update. The second one is important because the session just started last week. So I'll start with Tim and the product services update.
Thank you, Director Howard. As I invite Brian Adams forward to lead us through this presentation, I'll just remind the board of a couple of things. One is these are in service to our initiative around engaging customers in resource adequacy. And what you'll hear are this will take a little bit different flavor because it will talk about some of the recent programs we've either added or expanded. The goal of this is not to just add products and services, but it is to make sure we get adoption of those that are available. And sometimes high adoption requires filling strategic gaps in community needs, sometimes at lower numbers, sometimes at higher numbers. So you'll hear a bit of that. You'll also hear and see a term about how do we market these things. And occasionally we will get an inquiry about, we're a public utility, why do we do marketing activities? And the reality is that in order to get the adoption and get these in front of our customers, we have to connect them and create awareness with our customers so that they know those opportunities are there. Those tactics aren't too dissimilar from the way we're all marketed to buy things at retail or whatever it is. So that's the rationale that we use. We have to get these solutions in front of customers at the right time, in the right way, with the right voice. And Brian will give us a flavor of what that looks like.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Glad to be with you this day. Four quick slides to run through today. First off, wanted to share some of the new products and services and rebates that we are offering as of November and December. So in November, we launched a number of new business rebates. These are oriented around primarily small businesses and how they manage their buildings. So the target is energy efficiency. If we can work with them to reduce overall energy consumption, that helps OPPD overall in terms of the customer engagement for resource adequacy initiative that we're working towards. So we've got 6 new business rebate measures that all fall under that umbrella. They have different criteria. If you're interested in those, we can direct you to the website where that's all listed. But we offer a percentage of rebate based on size of facility for each of those. So this is really ensuring that the envelope is strong around the building, and then that the machines and building systems that are in the facility are operating efficiently. So striving towards the Energy Star guidelines and guidance and trying to make them as efficient as we can. So it ultimately will save our customers money in the individual, as well as help OPPD out and save our customers in the aggregate. In December, we launched the Small and Medium Business Direct Install. This is focused on an initial building energy audit. And so we will help cover the cost to bring awareness to where are your opportunities for saving energy consumption. We will help cover some of the labor to make those updates as well. They do come in combination with other rebates. And again, we have different criteria for these. So these customers would be on rate 230 or 231, maximum peak demand. Any questions on our newly launched products and services?
Brian, we talked briefly in the committee meeting about how these programs relate to the stuff that's going to come down from the NDEE. I believe it's the One Red program. Could you quickly summarize that?
Sure. They are continuing to work through their program definitions, and so we don't have a tight, concise, clear answer on that. Broadly speaking, they have received millions of dollars in federal funding that has been allocated, and so with confidence in it being executed, that would allow for sort of an expansion of these programs. So these programs will be in place. We allocate a certain amount of funds for each of our incentives and rebates per year. This funding can then be used to sort of plus up those programs.
It's additive, not the one replace. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Next up is the Dollar and Energy Savings Program, loan program. If you recall, in April of last year, we initiated a partnership with NDEE, and the program is to allow for loans at a low interest rate to enable energy efficiency or energy focused activities. From April through, I believe it was the end of November, end of October, 21 projects were funded with no marketing, no effort on our part at all, at an average of about $21,000 per project. The way this program works is that OPPD funds about 35% of the loan at 0% interest, and DEE funds about 35% of the loan at no interest. And then a bank, a partner, funds the remaining 30% at their given rate, not to exceed 10%. So on a, say, $10,000 loan, we fund $3,500, NDEE is $3,500. The bank will loan, say, $3,000 at all the 10% interest. The customer then ends up with a $10,000 loan at 3% interest. If the bank goes lower than 10%, the customer's loan experience goes even lower. So this has been a popular program. Within 6 months, we got a lot of response, and so we're happy to share that in December we were able to double our commitment to that program. These are revolving funds, and so as loans are paid back, they will become available for new customers. Depending on the uptake, we may end up engaging in some marketing activity, but given the trajectory and interest already, we're excited for the opportunity to expand.
Does this answer customers' request for on-bill financing by OPPD? Is this a response to that?
It is in that realm. It is not directly on-bill financing. We continue to explore that and are looking at that for a future effort. It's a partial answer.
Thank you.
Can you remind me what typically the terms of the loans are lengthwise? Are these 5-year, 10-year loans?
Those are set by the bank, I believe.
And we just match whatever the bank.
Correct. So there is a pot of money that the NDEE holds. So the state holds it and administers it. So it's very little effort on OPPD's part. We have put up funding, NDEE matches it, and then banks draw and issue loans.
So
At $21,000 is an average. I would suspect it's in the 3 to 5 year.
So I think that kind of answers a question of mine, that then this is not a lot of extra work, as it were, for OPPD.
Correct.
Put some money in and facilitate, and
Yes, it benefits our customers with very little administrative overhead.
thank you.
And to be clear, NDEE administers the project, or the program across the state, and our funding is specific to our service territory.
Correct. Yes.
now, if I may, it benefits our customers. And in this case, it benefits the customer in the individual realm, of course, the house, but it benefits our customers in the aggregate. So the extent that we can help with having customers that have more energy efficient homes. It's less generation, less transmission, less distribution infrastructure costs that we have to build. So just a reminder that these programs have multiplier effects that go beyond just the family who's living in that house. It helps everybody else at the same time.
And to connect this, it is a tie-in with our low and moderate income strategy. These products primarily focused on moderate income, who may have a little bit of flexibility, but where a lower interest rate can make it. All right. Next up, a slide with lots of words, and so we'll just cover a few. You're able to review it at your leisure. The primary goal of this slide and the next is to share that we have a pretty robust approach for marketing and how we engage both consumers as well as businesses in 2025. And so going down the left side, we'll be focusing the vast majority of our marketing efforts on Sarah. So customer engagement, and resource adequacy. This is distributed generation, so solar panels on rooftops. This is energy efficiency programs. This is demand shifting or demand reduction efforts through smart thermostats or full smart, other programs in those veins. And so this is really targeted at what Javier referenced, which is helping individuals help us. And so it ends up as a win-win situation. We will be looking to increase enrollment in smart thermostat, weatherization, and cool smart. I mean, 20% there. Jumping down, we'll be focusing on our customer engagement. Again, we've got more and more growing interest in what we're doing. How can our customers lower their individual bills? And we're happy to be responsive and ready with answers when those questions come. Finally, the bottom left item is new product acquisition for renewable choice product. That is the renewable energy certificates that we have now made available to our customers. This is an opportunity for those who are interested to pay a little extra to be able to say that their energy is 100% clean and renewable. So we get renewable energy certificates from our wind farms and solar facility. We then can allocate specific energy consumption to match with the renewable energy produced. And that is in a large public registry. The next slide is a lot of the same, focused on business as opposed to consumer.
Sorry, real quick from the previous slide. There's a couple acronyms that start at the top, B2C.
Business to consumer.
Yep. And then on the left side, CERA.
Consumer engagement on resource adequacy.
Great. Yep. Thanks. Appreciate that clarification so that everybody's on the same page about what we're talking about.
Thank you.
And then at the top of the next slide, B2B
to business.
Thank you.
Any final questions? Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mark.
Tim, anything else on that?
Nothing else to add, Director Howard.
Perfect. All right, so we'll move into the legislative and regulatory update.
Okay, I'll invite Seth forward. Seth's a familiar face and voice to many of us. Is in a very, very busy time in a long session, and will walk us through a baseline of where we are on our legislative and regulatory engagement.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna set a timer, or else get a little obvious. The microphone, we may go along. We go back one slide to the agenda. So we're gonna go over what happened in the elections. We'll do a state legislative overview and update, and a federal legislative overview and update. So let's go to the next slide. On the state side, there are 17 new senators, 33 Republicans, 16 Democrats. We've got new committee chairs and new committee members. There's some controversy around the committee assignments, but that all got worked out. So far, it looks like the committees that we really have a lot of things under: natural resources, government, revenue, transportation. We got pretty good committees for what we really need to have there. So Senator Tom Brandt's the new chair of the Natural Resource Committee. We worked with him before in the past. He sponsored 2 of our bills that we got over the finish line on low income customer assistance and on dark fiber. So pretty fortunate of what we got there. So that's good. The federal side, Republicans control the House, Senate, and the presidency. In the Senate, there are 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. In the House, it's 220 to 215, but it's going to be more like 217, 215 because some of the appointments are going to be going to the administration. So they have for a couple months, they'll have a 1 vote margin, which is going to be very interesting and seeing what they can do and how they're going to do it. There's new committee chairs, new committee members. So far, so good on everything we've seen there. I put reconciliation in here because that's how they're going to do most of their policy in the first few months, if not first year, what's going to happen there. And on reconciliation rules, it's a simple majority. There's no filibustering, anything like that. So they're going to try to pile in an awful lot of stuff. And it could be 2 bills, could be 1 bill. We're not sure how that works. It changes on a daily basis almost. That's where we'll find out what's going to happen. There are some strict budget rules that the parliamentarian sets on how that's going to work, but we'll see. And we'll get into what those issues will be when we get to the federal side. Next slide, please. All right. Welcome to the 109th legislative session, day 5. As of 10:30 this morning, we've had 221 bills introduced. Came in on the 8th, ends on June 9th, which is good. Was June 18th, but they cut back 9 days, which is good for everybody. Last day of bill introductions is on the 23rd, and hearings are on the 22nd. Finally, some public hearings are on March 28th. We'll go to all the floor debate and all those fun parts there. And the first days where the session determine the committee chairs and committee assignments, most times they usually do that on the first day. You at least get a preliminary list, but there was some jockeying back and forth. So we'll see where that's going to go. But right now it seems like they're going to hit the ground running, see what's going to go. So far, so good, but it's the legislature that can change anytime.
Hey, Seth, who appoints, I know the committee chairs are elected by the legislature. Who appoints the committee, makes the committee assignments?
The committee on committees, and then that's done by a caucus system. So if you're in the first, second, or third caucus, you kind of populate who it is. So if your chairman's in the third caucus, it goes, so that's 3. So then it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. In that way.
I compare it to like a fantasy football draft.
Yeah.
So if the chair is from the 3rd geographic region, then the next pick is from the 1st, and the next pick is from the 2nd, and then 3rd, 1, 2, 3. So each caucus or each committee is meant to have geographic representation across the state.
And so far, we've got our committees. I don't think, they'll be good committees for us. Next slide, please. Here we go on some of these here. So Senator Brandt will be on natural resources as the chair. TNT is Mosier, Senator Mosier. Government, Military, and Veterans Affairs is Senator Sanders, and then Appropriations is Senator Clements. As you can see, who's all on these things. From my stance, I think these are pretty good committees for us. I don't think there's any problems. We've done a lot of work getting to know every single person in the legislature and on all these committees. We have a pretty good foray into all the offices. We still contract with Lindsay, Parr, and McDonald, used to be O'Hara Lindsay. We also hired Randy Scott, who used to work for O'Hara Lindsay. Now she's over here helping us out on the state side and eventually the federal side. So that's what we're going to be. The most of our stuff goes through natural resources, but we'll have stuff on transportation and government, and every now and then we have appropriation stuff. So next slide, please. So here's the meat of everything. These are all the things we've heard that will be addressed potentially be addressed in the legislature, and there will have some of these will have several bills, some will have a couple, some just what it is. Hopefully some will drop off as well. Start on the top on zoning, there could be 2 or 3 bills, maybe even more than that, seeing what that's going to be between having a shot clock, protecting private property rights, to complying with all zoning rules and regulations across the board for everybody. We'll see where that's going to go. obligation to serve language is more, and the rate language is more around that, just trying to get some flexibility on what can or can't happen. Could be some other rates issues going on there. Chapter 70 modernization, every now and then we see a bill or two that just tweaks some of the language that's in chapter 70. It could be obsolete language, could be improving it. Most of this stuff is going to fall under there anyway, so that could all be lumped into there. Addressing the Pacific Stress Test Act, we had this one last year. It was a little controversial. We opposed it. There's been one bill introduced so far. I think it's a shell bill, which we're going to keep a pretty good eye on. The only thing it's taking out is when they have to appoint the committee, and that was in April of last year. So it's a shell bill. Let's see where that's going to go. PRV issues usually come up. Dispatchable generation and the net zero programs. Those are rumored bills. Not sure if those are going to come about or not. The dispatchable one could be a percent. We have to have a certain percentage of dispatchable energy in our portfolio, and net zero just could be, we have to have a reliability off ramp and could have a cost cap. Not sure if those are going to go either way. Foreign adversary, this is anything about foreign owned land. It could be foreign components on any of our infrastructure. There's always some component to that on there, and we've already had a couple bills on that have come up that we will be addressing. Rail issues, there's safety issues, there's some specific landowner issues. We'll be going through all of those. Nameplate capacity tax increase. During the special session, the private developers said that it probably needs to be raised, and they were neutral on a lot of these. But now it depends on how they're going to do it. Is it going to be just CPI every year? Is it going to be to a certain number? Because right now the number's 3518, I think, which was based on the formula they had in the past. Could it go up to 4,000, 5,000? Could they put an incentive if zoning rules and regulations, they get a little bit more? All that's going to be on the table to see where that's going to go. There is a bill already on exempting retail electric sales tax. It also includes natural gas and propane. That's by Senator Holcroft. That's LB 117. We'll see how that's going to go. Right now, there's not a lot of money in the budget, so I think they're $432 million in the hole. This would add to that. So there's other tax increase bills that we'll see, and that's the property tax relief 2.0 on the other side. So we'll see where that's going to go. NEMA changes to address ice jams and uncommon incidents. Senator Victor Roundtree is going to introduce that for us, which is going to be great. See if we can get NEMA to the table to see what we can do on that. EV infrastructure, energy efficiency, transmission issues. We're going to have a lot of these things are coming up. Net metering, shutoff issues. I'll flag that one for you guys as well. On the shutoff issues, you can't shut off on Fridays now, holidays, that kind of stuff. Bless you. We'll see if that's going to be introduced or not, but one of those other issues that have come up. Some of the other ones that I wrote down too, there's going to be some telecom, broadband, and pole attachment issues. A lot of business issues on overtime, medical leave, bonding, workers' comp, employee preferences. There will be some renewable energy bills out there. Some are just kind of fixing some of the issues we had last year on. We have to have that meeting for everyone that goes through some of those issues that are on there. We weren't really sure when it started. So this is on saying after construction and in service kind of issues like that. We'll see where that's going to go. There's an HOA bill. There's LB 43 is one for us to watch. This is a bill by Senator DeKay, expands the definition of construction on foreign owned. We had this bill before. Last year, Senator Bosselman did it. It said within miles of military base or silo, you can't have any foreign components or anything. The intent then was anything construction going forward is what it was. And the Attorney General's opinion, the Attorney General said, yes, the construction means going forward. Now there's language in there that says anything you operate, maintain, change, repair, anything going, whatever it is, would now be included in that. So utilities are kind of in pretty good solidarity on saying that's too far on what this is doing. It's really expanding PRB's jurisdiction over that side of it.
And it's important for larger utilities like us. We already have to comply with NERC, SIP standards and report, etc. So this becomes a big burden for smaller utilities who don't already have these programs, and they would have to. It's just an added administrative cost. But I just wanted to clarify that for us.
Yes.
wouldn't be that big.
There'll be a lot of economic development bills out there. There's already been a bill on no wind turbines or its components or solar panels in landfills in the state. There, LB 163 creating the climate office in NDEE by Senator Spivey. Like I said, a lot of tax issues. Senator Brand already has 3 on some sales tax exemptions. There's a couple of those in there that will impact us, but we'll see how that's going to go. But yeah, it's going to be a big session. We're going to have a lot of bills we're tracking. I think so far I'm already out of 221. We're probably 40 that we have to read through and really get to see what's going to happen. And there's going to be more. It's only day 5. We still have 5 more of these to go. So there's going to be a lot of small bills that we're going to see that may come into committee priority bills that could become bigger bills. And we still don't know what's going to happen on the other bills that are introduced. So we're keeping an eye on it. We're there every day. Like I said, we spent an awful lot of time this last year and the year before getting to know the senators. So when they come through the rotunda, they'll come over and say hi. They'll let us know things beforehand. It's been a good process for all of us to do that. So I think we're sitting in a good spot to make sure that we're going to protect the district. And
Last date to introduce bills is when?
January 23rd.
January 23rd. So we have a week and 2 days.
The drafting, like everything will have to be drafted.
Yeah, I think you have to have everything for bill drafters if you want to get the bill introduced by Thursday or Friday. Yeah. So it's pretty quick on getting new bills out there or anything like that. So
Remind me, last session, we got over 800 bills. Is that right?
yes. And there was pieces of a lot of them. But then at the end, they wanted to stay away from the big Christmas tree bills, and they still went to that anyway. So I have a feeling we're going to be getting some of that here. It just depends on when things are introduced, and I think a lot of the senators right now are waiting. But the other issue could be too, since bill drafters are so backed up right now on certain things, we may get a bill that's drafted bad, and then it's fixed with a committee amendment that may or may not seem like the first bill. So it's just staying vigilant on those kind of things to make sure where we're going to be. Because one of the bills that they're doing now is they're combining Department of Natural NDEE with Department of Natural Resources. So they're consolidating the two. That bill first started at like 1,000 pages, and now it's down to about 400 or 500, I heard. So I feel bad for bill drafters, and they've had turnover too, just like everybody else. They have a lot of new bill drafters down there, which are trying to keep up. So next slide, please. On the federal side, these are our key issues that we're going to have here. IRA and IIJA issues. More of that is just protecting what's in there on reconciliation. That's going to be for a lot of things. We're going to make sure keep our federal stakeholders, APPA, LPPC, NEI, American Clean Power, all on the same wavelength that we're all trying to protect that. Protecting tax exempt financing as well, since they're going to try to make the 2017 tax credits permanent. All our stuff becomes a pay for at some point. So we've been monitoring that for years to make sure that's not going to happen. So everyone's on board there. Permitting reform will come up. Depends on what that's going to look like, and what we're going to be able to do on that. They are thinking they're going to put that in budget reconciliation, but again, parliamentary rules and budget rules will dictate how much they can do on that. The last time they did that, they had some NEPA reforms that actually went through reconciliation. So it's one of those things that can make the cut there. LIHEAP funding is going to be a big push for everybody across the nation, since more generations coming online, rates are going up. We're going to try pushing for more funding there as much as we can to make sure that is fully funded and make sure it's at an adequate level. And then, of course, the ISHAM issues, Missouri River issues, Water Resource Development Act. We got the language in this last Word of Bill. Going forward, we need to see what's going to happen there. So far, when I've been talking with the other utilities, Mid-Am, Ameren, others, we may need to take another bite at this apple to go in the right directions for that. So keep you posted on that one. But so far, we're lucky. We're very thankful we got what we had in there before, kind of helped with the Army Corps, making sure that we're all working in concert together, good partners. Next slide. These are the other issues we're also looking at. So all these issues come up every year. They're small bills. Sometimes they go into big bills. With the levels in Congress where they are, some of these are going to be a little bit harder to come by, but there will be some in there that will make it across the finish line, and we'll make sure we're at there in the beginning. But even if they don't get done, all this is setting is, it's setting the background for working these issues as we go along the process. First energy bill I ever worked on, I started in 1997. We finished it in 2005. So it takes a long time to get these things done, but all of this work goes into creating those bigger bills when it comes down to what we need. So we always keep an eye on this stuff to make sure we know what's in there, we know what's good for us, we know what we're doing, what we need to work on going forward. Our congressional delegation is very good for us, but we also talk with committee staff, leadership staff, other members of Congress and other committees that are from different areas, just because they have the jurisdiction over those areas. So it's a multi-pronged approach that we use for there as well, and it makes sure that we get our stuff where we need to keep our fat on the fire.
If I were to pick one of these that I think is gonna gather a lot of attention, is gonna be the nuclear piece on regulatory issues with the NRC and what position the Department of Energy takes on that. I think that's the one piece that I all of these may come for sure, but nuclear is something that's gathering a lot of attention. I fully expect that to be front and center of the national stage.
And President Biden just said today that he did an order about data centers and AI, and part of that was nuclear energy. Making sure the Department of Energy is going to put a focus on building nuclear energy to power the AI going forward, those kind of things. So we're going to see how that's going to work. President-elect Trump has said he's good with nuclear and he wants AI as well, with Elon Musk on his team.
That's one of the few items where you can see bipartisan support so far.
Yeah, and the main thing is just getting the permitting time down, the certificates down, just the paperwork down. Is the timelines are always so long to get those things out. If they can narrow those down, then do a federal backstop on some of the cost, I think it'll go. So I think Javier's exactly right.
Anticipated work on federal backstop on costs is part of the discussion to help protect customers from the potentially escalating costs of nuclear.
Yeah, Senator Risch he introduced a bill last year that would kind of federal backstop getting small modular reactors up and moving. The cost is daunting. That's always the thing. The first one always costs the most. I mean, the same thing was for renewable energy too. The first ones were very expensive, but the more you get them down, the cheaper they get. And a lot of people think that the federal government is in a prime spot to help on that side of it, on getting the costs down and protecting consumers along the way.
Well, the first one cost the most except for the last several, right? The last ones were the most expensive ever built. So I guess the concern about customer protection against cost on nuclear is prominent for me.
Yeah, and we're talking more of the small modular micro reactors. The big ones I think are not done, but the focus right now is on small modular advanced nuclear.
Thanks.
And really, I think a big component of the cost pressure has to do with regulation. How extensive, how lengthy the regulatory process is, the permitting process for nuclear. And I think that's what you may see, and I would like to see some movement there in shortening, expediting the processes. That should help with costs. The steel itself, the technology itself, it's really not that different than you see in other parts of the world. The regulation piece is very different, and that arguably is pushing costs up.
Yep. And those are the ones we have there. Next slide.
That's it.
That's all we had. So any questions on those things? So we're staying vigilant on everything that's coming up. We'll keep you guys apprised. If there are any questions? Stop 30 seconds early. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, and with that, the Customer and Public Engagement Committee rests.
Great, thanks very much. Next on the agenda for today is the Finance Committee. Director Spurgeon.
Well, thank you. Chair Williams, the Finance Committee did not meet this month either. We have just one reporting item, and so I will turn it over to CFO Bishop.
Fantastic. I'm going to invite Mr. John Petrulis up front, our Manager of Treasury Debt and Investments. This is on pledged securities. It's a reporting item, no action required, state required, but we ensure that we're in annual compliance. And John will walk us through that. Thank you, John.
Morning, everybody. I am John Petrillos. I'm the manager of our Treasury Debt and Investments area, and I am going to report on our pledged securities reporting item. Nebraska law requires that OPPD that any bank balances OPPD holds that are greater than the $250,000 federal deposit insurance limit are secured with pledged securities. We have two banks that we could potentially have greater than $250,000 limits. Wells Fargo Bank is our main bank, and we usually have balances that are greater than $250,000, and then also US Bank. Both of these institutions hold governmental securities that securitize in any of the balances. So if we have a $5 million balance at Wells Fargo Bank, for example, they're going to hold at least $5 million of governmental securities that'll back this for OPPD. We also have a number of other banking relationships with collection banks. These are just banks that generally customers can make deposits at, and they don't, their balances are low, probably like $5,000 range, so they don't require pledged securities. That is pretty much it. If I don't know if you have any questions or follow up on it, but
Have we made any modifications to the top two? It was the same Wells Fargo and US Bank we had last year, right?
Yeah.
We haven't changed that.
it has been. In US Bank, we don't really generally have very high deposits with them. It's more, we use them for trustee services, and so sometimes we need to send cash or to move cash back and forth from US Bank. But Wells Fargo Bank is the dominant player, I guess, where we would have to worry about pledged securities.
How do you go about selecting banks in the bottom list? Is this something that has to do with convenience with customers, locations for payments, et cetera?
Yeah, and I don't specifically work with that, but yes, it's just like in some of the different towns in OPPD service territory, it's just providing a service. It's extremely cheap for OPPD. I think I saw one bill come through like maybe $500 or something for a year to actually provide for these banks to provide this service for OPPD. And it just makes it convenient for OPPD customers to have another avenue to make payments.
It's good that it's spread around the district.
Yes.
Any other questions for John?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the Finance Committee, yes, also.
Great, thanks very much. So we are a bit ahead of the agenda, which is great. But before we get to the Systems Committee and the other business, which have longer items on them, we'll take a brief break just to make sure we're all in good shape and then go to the end of the agenda from there. So 10 minutes, 11:20 a.m., please. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Next agenda item is the Systems Committee. Director Moody.
Thank you, Chair Williams. The Systems Management Nuclear Oversight Committee did in fact meet on January 2nd. The agenda is in front of you. A couple of things that I do want to highlight. Agenda item number 4, there were two parts to this. The committee received an update on the amended agreement with Energy Solutions, which, as you all know, is our partner in the decommissioning of Fort Calhoun. That agreement maintains a focus on shared goals for safe, efficient, cost-effective completion of the project, and also prioritize or review the remaining costs and schedule. The project remains on track for substantial completion by the third quarter of 26 and within budget. So all is moving along well there. The committee also received an update on a shipment of radiological demolition materials from inside of containment to the disposal facility in Utah. There was a single occurrence of materials very slightly shifting inside the covered rail car that took place during one shipment, resulting in changing conditions in transit between Fort Calhoun Station and the disposal facility. The team has subsequently put in place new actions to further reduce risk of reoccurrence, which the Nuclear Regulatory Commission have reviewed. So two important updates there, again, for board members, additional information and diligent if you need it. And then the next one I wanted to mention very briefly is the electric vehicle planning. We did, about 6 months or so ago, receive kind of a little preview of the district's integrated distribution plan that it was initiating. And so this is an element of that IDP, and the committee received some information specifically about how the district is strategizing and planning for the continued adoption of EVs in the territory. Not going to go into a lot of detail because this is going to come to the full board for your awareness, which is to say an update on the IDP either this quarter, next quarter in 25. So you've got more information coming. And then the new generation project updates, we got some of that in closed session and we'll get additional for the public consumption later in the agenda. So that's the chair's report. Let's move right along if we can to an update on systems weather hardening. Super interested in this.
Yeah, we're excited to give you a report out on this. Ryan Gertz will come up. He's our Director of Plant Operations. We'll go through what we've done at the facilities. As a reminder, we've seen some amazingly cold spells of weather the last several years. Deep freezes that kind of move into the territory, impacting generation from North Dakota all the way down to Texas. So it's been kind of interesting to see the impacts. I mean, it's been cold here for many years, right? We've operated, but we've had some really deep freezes, and it's caused us to kind of reassess, some of the protections we have in our generation stations. Talk about that here. You'll hear a lot about investments and the investments we've made as an organization. And those investments are people, process, and the equipment itself, engineering solutions to help reduce risk of future interruptions during some of these cold weather events. Obviously, very important to keep the electrons flowing when it's -20. It's a safety thing, and we take it very serious. And Ryan's going to talk to you about some of the really good progress we've had. There will always be struggles in this case when it gets really cold, just like we see at our own houses. No matter what you winterize, you'll find something new. But the team's done some exceptional work in this space.
Yeah, appreciate it, Troy. First off, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide an update to the board of directors and our customers on our generating facilities and what we've been doing over the past year to prepare them for this extreme cold weather. I know some of you have been there, visited our facilities. As Troy said, we've operated through cold weather, but some of the deep freezes we've had, some of the events of the past 3 years have really triggered not only needs from an industry perspective, but also at OPPD. So first off, I want to talk through a few of the drivers and remind everybody what the call to action from the industry was and where it's going and why OPPD's further hardening our facilities and preparing them for those extreme cold events. Each of the past 3 years between Winter Storm Uri, Elliott, and Jerry, we've been challenged across the industry to be able to serve our customers. And so the increasingly impactful events that are occurring have led to this call to action by all utilities and all generators. Coupled with that, in the Missouri River Basin, from North Dakota down over to St. Louis, there's been an impact to operations in the winter due to regional drought. Lower release rates from the Missouri River from Gavin's Point Dam have caused challenges during these extreme events due to ice jamming along the river. Thirdly, the national and regional regulations have been adopted between NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, and the Southwest Power Pool have required utilities to enhance operations and preparedness at our facilities. And lastly, the reduced margin on the bulk electric system due to the massive increase in growth and the supply and the demand from a megawatt perspective has also made it imperative that we're ready to operate through these extreme events. So the culmination of all these factors and these recent weather storms have really heightened the awareness of the district, especially as it pertains to cold weather performance. As you recall, we've completed extreme operating reviews in each of the past 3 years, presented them and shared them with the board of directors. I'm here to share where we've taken that and where we're going in coming years. Next slide. Hi. So on behalf of those teams at the facilities, I really want to give them thanks and kudos for the efforts over the past year. This slide doesn't summarize fully the scope of work that they've taken on along with their other jobs to make sure that these generating units are ready to operate. As I mentioned, those extreme operating reviews, we captured hundreds of lessons learned between Uri, Elliott, and Jerry. We've been improving our processes and procedures, and they've been ingrained into normal operations such that those repeat offenders do not come back and challenge our facilities. We've invested millions in physical modifications to harden all our generating facilities, be it a North Omaha station, Nebraska City station, or our peakers. We've met and exceeded those new regulatory standards and requirements for extreme cold weather operations that I mentioned earlier. And the preventative maintenance routines that were completed this fall in preparation for this winter, they include literally thousands of generating station tasks that our operations, maintenance, engineering, and work management teams complete to make sure the stations are ready. As I was driving to work this morning, I was thinking about this specific point, and that I think everybody here winterizes their house. You know, you've got a handful of tasks that you do, but we really took a new look at this from a different lens, right? You know, how are we challenging the makers of our systems, right? If you were to ask the developer of your HVAC system on your house to prove that unit will operate down to that temperature, right? We've taken that level of detail at our plants. And then finally, we've benchmarked with all the neighboring utilities in the area to learn how they've captured and how they've prepared their facilities for operations in the events, as well as meeting with key stakeholders along the Missouri River to raise the awareness of the impacts these ice events and the cold weather has on our facilities. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit, give you some detail on some of those generating facilities before I bring it back out. Sarpy County Station, it houses some of our older generators within the district. As you can see there, this is a picture of insulation and heat tracing on piping and systems that are outside and exposed to those temperatures. We replaced a significant portion of insulation in the heat tracing to make sure those pipes stay warm and do not freeze during winter events. I'd like to also call out the indicator lights that you can see in the middle. Those were a learning that we captured from our Turtle Creek and Standing Bear Lake station that have been recently constructed. So we were able to deploy that new technology. It visibly shows the teams that system is working in an operation at any point in time during normal operations. Down at Nebraska City Station.
On the heat tracing, what's the length of the pipes total?
We did about, I don't know the exact number.
Over 2,800 feet.
It was thousands of linear feet, yeah, over this last fall that we replaced.
It's incredible work that just happened this fall.
Yeah, we did a full assessment of Sarpy County Station and Jones Street Station this summer, which then gave us a prioritized scope of work and where our best bang for the buck was to replace those insulation.
For fuel oil.
For fuel oil, for water systems, for oil. Exactly. Right. And then down at Nebraska City Station, our largest generator, not only by megawatts, but also by space. We added a remote temperature monitoring system with, as you can see in the middle on top of the lighted box there's a black box with an antenna on it. And so those are strategically placed around the generating facility to provide real-time feedback to the control room. Should a space that may not have full-time monitoring or people in that area start to drop in temperature, we get an alarm to the control room to make sure we can deploy people and respond quickly so that facility is hardened. So just a couple specific examples I wanted to call out, again, of the hundreds to thousands of tasks completed to make sure our facilities are ready to go.
Just a reminder, Nebraska City Station's what, 9 stories?
It's 250 feet tall, 150 feet wide, and 350 feet long.
So there's
From a
pockets
space
that get cold, hot, and so having systems like this in place to monitor is really important. In addition to this, we also have people running around with thermal cameras doing walk downs and reviewing the sites when it starts to get extremely cold. So some layers of defense in place to understand what's going on.
And then lastly, you've gotten a lot of updates on Turtle Creek and Standing Bear Lake. Just to show a little foresight that the district had several years ago at the onset of construction, we implemented a design standard where Standing Bear Lake is now rated for minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit and Turtle Creek is minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So just wanted to show and share our lowest temperature ever in the district was minus 23. And these plants are now rated for that once we take ownership in the coming months. Okay. Slide. All right, so I know this looks like a busy slide, but this is meant to really share and show what Mr. Boyles talked about from the impacts to the Missouri River between Sioux City
and St. Louis, there's nominally 7,000 megawatts of generation along the Missouri River. And they require the cooling water in the river to be able to operate and cool their units for thermal operation. And so each of the past two winters, on Christmas Eve of 22, during Winter Storm Elliott, and last winter during Winter Storm Jerry, both North Omaha and Nebraska City Station were impacted by the river. But I want to call out that we weren't the only ones. And so we've been collaborating with the operations teams, the government affairs teams, with the other utilities shown on here at their stations. We've visited those facilities. We've learned how they've hardened their systems, how they've operate along the river, and we've brought those learnings back within the district. We've also been working with key stakeholders of the Missouri River, which you can see on the right. And I want to have a special call out to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We've met with them several times in the past year to raise the awareness of the impacts of this, and also so that they can ingrain it into their operations and help manage that water resource and the mission that they have. Missouri River.
And Ryan, just to clarify, on this map, this is just all the generation stations on the river. Doesn't mean that all of them or all the units tripped because of lack of water, but they all share the same river risk. For example, MPPD Cooper Nuclear Station, it didn't trip. They were worried about the river levels dropping, but it never triggered a shutdown. That's very important. We talk about it nuclear.
Some have, some haven't, but I would say that generally the worry and the concern is there because of those lower operating. But we do have a really good network of communication that's been built out across the utilities, as well as those that manage and operate the river. So we've seen, even this year with the first cold snap that we had last week, a really good response by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They released additional flow out of Gavin's Point Dam, which helped reduce the risk to all of those generators downstream.
The water levels are sufficient at this point, not.
They are sufficient for normal operations for all of these generators at the current release rates. When the winter storms do come in and the icing on the river occurs, the impact from the jamming that occurs and the loss of level can impact our generators. They proactively increase those release rates from Gavin's ahead of cold snaps, such that the water can make it down to our generators. I think we're 2 to 3 days away from Gavin's Point as it travels. Next step slide, please. All right, so as Troy mentioned at the onset, much like our storms that you heard about last month that impact our transmission and distribution systems in the summer, each winter storm has been unique to the district. It impacts our generating facilities the same or differently. And so we come at them from the same approach, though, with a continuous improvement mindset, so we can capture those learnings and put them into how we operate our facilities. We have a disciplined monitoring approach, as you've seen, changing weather patterns, temperature, river flows, and we've developed those advocacy levels at the local and state and national perspectives to be able to help raise that risk and elevation. And then we continue to evaluate additional investments that are needed at our generating facilities. We have a multi-year plan looking at those systems, what are needed to harden them, and we'll continue to work towards resiliency in each of those facilities. Our newer generation facilities, as I mentioned, at Standing Bear Lake and Turtle Creek, are designed for -30 and -40. However, as you've heard about this morning, our new generators that will be placed at Cass County and at Turtle Creek Unit 3, they will also be designed for -30. So looking forward to having those online, and to call out that they do not rely on river cooling just based on their technology. And then this culture of collaboration within the industry, based on the last 3 years and the winter storms that we've had, I've seen a really strong approach for all utilities to work together. We've had a strong relationship with generators throughout the industry, but it's really ramped up to be able to share and reduce those risks across all utilities to make sure that the power we provide our customers is resilient.
Ryan, can you describe the pictures on the slide? What did we use those for?
Super good question. These are, you talked about space heaters. I think I heard at the beginning, right? These are space heaters, but they're fueled not by electricity, right? They're maybe diesel and propane at different times, but we've literally got millions of BTUs of heaters staged around our facilities. Say we get an alarm from one of those remote temperature monitoring systems in a remote part of the plant that Troy hit on.
we can deploy these to those areas to make sure that, that we have backup plans to our system heat. So, good question.
And also lessons learned we got from the water intakes, right? Once they're frozen, how do we thaw them? How do we get the water flowing?
Yeah, once they're frozen, we've deployed some new tools this year. We've actually got ice brooms at the Rest City. I don't have a picture of that, but we can deploy those down the front of the intake grids where the water comes in and to clean off those grids. The best thing that happens is we've got a warm water recirc. So basically from our plant systems, we inject water upstream into the river to be able to heat up and keep those cells warm. Other questions?
I'll just add to this too. Part of the goal as we work through this, like the environment for some of our employees over these last cold spells have been really tough, where they're spending very long periods of time outside and maybe 10, 15, 20 degrees. So part of this is to also think about, you know, the kind of work environment we have for them and safety around that. So during this last cold snap, they look really well. I mean, there's always a few things here and there we find, but I'd say the work to get us through that was much less than it has been in the past. And let's our folks focus on preventive maintenance and some of the things that need to be done around the plant instead of trying to keep things from freezing, which has been very positive and received quite well with our staff. So that was something really important too, as we thought through this. It wasn't just keeping them online, but what kind of quality of life for our folks dealing with this kind of stuff.
Can you talk a little bit about where's my question? The temperatures at which we start to get concerned, right? I'm just looking at the forecast. It's going to be pretty cold this weekend. The lows are -2. And I know it's probably like a gradient, right? But I'm just curious about when we start to look at forecasts that are really significant. And maybe some of this is for my mental preparation to kind of keep an eye on that stuff, understand.
-10, I'll give you that.
-10?
-10 degrees Fahrenheit, right?
That's it?
That's the temperature that we've seen more impacts to our, all of our impacts along the Missouri River and most of the impacts in our generating facilities. Yeah.
Got it.
It's not just temperature, it's also wind, direction of wind and things of that nature. I think that's been some of the interesting things is 1 year at -10, it's not a big deal because the wind's coming from a certain direction and the next year it changes and it looks different. It's something the team keeps track of pretty readily. And even when we start getting down to zero, operations is having conversations about how are we planning? What's our staffing look like?
Right.
Have we tested all the heaters and things like that, which is usually all done before we get into the meeting, but there's some action calls that take place as we start to see some of those, some of that trend.
I'd also add that once we see 10 degrees above zero, for 3 consecutive days, we start opening a dialogue with the Army Corps right away and begin a regular cadence of calls monitoring for when it does hit that -10 degree threshold.
Icing would be an initiating event for our attention as well.
Colleagues, any other questions?
I appreciate the winter preparedness that you described. Is there anything that I would say corresponds to summer preparedness? Is there anything that?
Much lesser in scale. Yeah, I mean, are there heat impacts to our generating facilities? Absolutely. But from an initiative perspective, it's much smaller. We prepare, just like you prepare your house, right? We come out of winter, we de-winterize our generating facilities, we ensure cooling systems are in place. We're looking at risks to those as well. So that's all procedurally documented. But generally, we've got a lot more runtime on those warmer temperatures and can manage those much easier.
The way I understand it, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think in the summer, it's people, right? Our employees working in hot conditions, if they're up in the turbines, we do have limited windows of time when we can have our employees working in those conditions. We just have to have those plans and we do. And then the other threat that we have in the summer, it's a lot of it is on our transmission. On our infrastructure when you have lines that heat and start sagging, etc. It's a different set of challenges.
Absolutely. Nope, correct.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I'll just say one more thing, like
Oh, sure.
in a hot summer period, the temperature of the river matters. So if you have a drought season with very high temperatures, hot water coming in, it's a lot harder to move facilities. We see derates during that time. Generally speaking, though, I don't think we've ever had one take us off. But it can stress the units just a little bit.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Very much appreciated. Director Williams, that does it for SMNO.
Great, thanks very much. We have other items on the agenda. First other item, confirmation board meeting agenda for Thursday. As we mentioned earlier today, by default, everything appears on the consent agenda. We've already had some discussion. Does anybody want to move one of the items? Leadership? Move leadership. Any other items from the consent action list that you'd like on the discussion item list instead?
Point of clarification, when you say leadership, is that item number 8 or also 9?
Sorry, item number 8 on the list that we're seeing on screen, election of board officers.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Say it will be on consent I'm sorry, but will item 9 remain on consent?
Is where it is listed now. If anyone would like to move that to the discussion item, we can.
As a point of order, I think that would be awkward because you would approve the,
It has to be moved.
I think it have to be, or at least number 8 has to go first before number 9. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm jumping in. Yeah, it would be right that the election of board officers would precede the standing committee. So I would recommend that if you're taking 8 and putting into discussion, 9 would.
Great. And then they will appear in the same order, officers first, committees second on the discussion item list for Thursday. Sounds good. So the other items, still good? Sounds good. Next, review the board work plan. Do any of the committee chairs have any updates to the board work plan going forward? We don't have pre-committee meetings, and we're doing the transition to new committee structures. So
I will just mention for full
Yes.
disclosure, we've had a little discussion regarding an item for the finance committee, which I will send on to the next committee chair after Thursday.
sounds good. Not a specific action item, but kind of ongoing awareness.
Exactly. Nothing that requires anything. Certainly not today or Thursday, and maybe not for quite a while.
Sounds good. Thanks for the reminder there. Great. We have an additional information item today, new generation and transmission update.
Okay, very exciting. We've got some great news today. Joe, I'll invite you up, give the delivery here, but many of you have been long discussing with us the headwinds in the industry and the finite workforce and finite equipment and our growing load. And today we're here to celebrate some activities that we've got across our generation fleet. And so I'll invite Joe up to
I think there's
speak
some
a
other
little.
updates on here
Yeah,
too.
there's other updates as well. So sorry if I cued you too early.
Go to the next slide.
There we go.
We'll start with Cheryl McGuire to give us an update on Standing Bear and Turtle Creek. And Cheryl's the Senior Director of Operations Support. Her group has all of the project management. She's going to talk a little bit about the progress we see at those facilities.
Good morning. So this is our agenda in this section, Standing Bear Lake Station and Turtle Creek Station 1 and 2. I'll give the update, then we'll move into solar and storage resource update. Then new dual fuel combustion turbine update and North Omaha Station transition update. So I'll be taking the first part. You can go to the next slide. So I'm happy to report that both of these stations are now in full commissioning phases. You can see the percentage of site progress there. Some of the key milestones for Standing Bear Lake Station, all but one of the 9 engines has successfully been tested for performance on both natural gas and fuel oil. Corrections are being made on the one engine that didn't pass to support successful follow-up testing. Emissions control media has been loaded and is currently being tested at that site. Some of the key milestones for Turtle Creek Station, Both units 1 and 2 have had successful performance and emissions testing on natural gas. Concerning fuel oil, unit 1 will be doing first fire on target for this week later on. So once those tests have been successfully completed, we'll move directly into unit 2. And then we'll move into emissions testing on fuel oil at that site. So for both stations, further engine tuning, performance, and emissions testing on both fuels will run into probably the beginning of February, which will push substantial completion to the latter part of February. And then last time I gave an update, there was a question on the interim generation interconnection agreement, or the GIA. So I'm happy to announce that we did hear word back from SPP that we have been approved for the interim GIA to operate at full capacity without restrictions for 2025. And they do anticipate having a final GIA approval by Q3 of this year.
That's great. That's big news.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting news. Yes, yes. Great, thank you. So we'll move into the solar and storage update. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We can jump to the next slide. So this has just some contextual elements in the upper right-hand corner. The production was up to 1,500 megawatts of renewable generation. We have the High Banks contract in place, which is a wind facility, Milligan Wind, 300 megawatts, and then the Pierce County Solar and battery storage facility. But contextually here, the solar 420 megawatts, which leaves us a sliver of the pie of 180 megawatts remaining. Pierce County Energy Center is underway. It's under construction. If you go out in the field, they're putting in roadways. They have, we've got piles will start to be driven in May. And so you can picture the steel piles, and then the racking they put on the piles will start to come in June, and panels will come in June already. So things are moving quick out there, and that facility is estimated to come online in early 2027 under the contract. So great progress out there on a very sizable and complex facility, because it's got the battery storage aspect to it as well. Next slide. On K Junction, the solar regs, if folks recalled through the updates we've provided, the solar regs in essence started with the Planning and Zoning Commission in York County. They had some restrictive setbacks that were then passed to the county board. And then the county board had some issues, wanted some clarity, passed it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Planning and Zoning Commission has now hired Marvin Consulting, and Marvin Consulting is basically going to help them with a comp plan, and then help with how things kind of fit in with that comp plan. So they're working with that. January 20th this month, they have their next meeting, and we're anticipating getting more clarity on timing during that Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So we'll get a better sense there of what Marvin Consulting is planning with a comp plan and timing, et cetera. Next slide. Then solar grant. So this is a grant that we worked with NET and have received from NET. It's a $500,000 grant that we're receiving, in essence, to pursue a principle of, you often have irrigation pivots work in a circle, and it's the principle is to use the corners, like basically areas that the crops aren't irrigated well, and so you kind of end up with a non, I don't want to say non-productive, but less than optimal productive area of a field. And so that's kind of the principle that we're pursuing there. We're started last year, kicking off some efforts here and into this year with anticipated commercial operations sometime in 2027. By the time we get those kind of figured out, we don't know where we're going to put it yet. We need to work our way through those processes. So definitely early and the stages here. And this maybe size-wise would be like maybe watt. It's not intended to be anything large. It's intended really to be more of a learning kind of opportunity in that regard of how do we deploy these kinds of principles with facilities.
So, Joe, at 1 megawatt, does that require an interconnection agreement with SPP?
It does not. It does not.
Great.
Yeah.
Streamlined process. Love to hear it.
Yeah, the principle there, if it helps, is if you're injecting into the grid, there's some megawatt thresholds, but in essence, a 1 megawatt facility would be consumed on the distribution system. And so SPP doesn't have a concern or require a generation interconnection agreement. Great question. Next slide. Okay, energy storage update. In the board resolution, it's at approximately 125 megawatts of battery storage. But as we noted earlier, the Pierce County Energy Center has a battery storage component to it that satisfies the board resolution aspect there. However, we are continuing to look at North Omaha Station for battery storage, just in the sense of, as we've discussed in other briefings and other quarterly briefings, there's lots of risks like generation interconnection agreement that Director Williams just brought up. Pierce County Energy Center does not currently have a generation interconnection agreement. So these risks, we basically scenario plan as we move forward with projects. So we invest in a project and look at it, but we're also at the same time considering, well, what if something goes awry? We don't want to be flat-footed if it does not go well. So we're continuing to advance the assessment at North Omaha Station for battery storage and what we can put there. We're looking at where we would put it, how much could we put there, what's it look like from the interconnection agreement standpoints and the retirement replacement process, et cetera. And certainly the budgetary estimates, we have a sense of a little more detail around that. Next slide. Then on the dual fuel combustion turbine update, this is super exciting. So we've started back to the board resolution in August. We had the combustion turbine contracts, which were a really, really big deal when we executed those. And all the effort over the past year and a half, 18 months or so has poured into this. We super thrilled to announce we've executed a contract with Kiewit to be our EPC contractor to advance Turtle Creek Station and Cass County Station to get them the construction aspects of them and get them online. So that's super thrilled. So much effort has been put into that. It's been absolutely outrageous across our organization, organizations outside of our organization helping us. Burns and McDonnell is our owner's engineer helping just so much leaning forward and critical thought to get us to where we are.
Hey, Joe, can you, for perspective, can we mention what percent of our overall portfolio capacity is the 900 megawatts?
So are you speaking of the entire portfolio?
Yes.
What is 900 of our entire portfolio? So I have my nose off the top of our head.
It will be approximately 20%. So once this is added, it will be about 20% of our generation.
Yeah.
It's large. And if I may, I would like to just openly, publicly thank staff, first of all, you, Joe, and everyone that has worked on these. But I'm really excited about the partnership. The Kiewit companies have, they're great to work with us and announcing these. This is certainly something that's exciting. Headquartered in Omaha, a local company, but with a very clear, very large international presence. We're excited to partner with someone with that depth of experience and the quality work that they've done, which is something that we're looking forward to delivering these assets for the benefit of our customers here in their headquarters city, which is the same service territory we serve.
Great, and they've been a great outfit to work with thus far. Just the detail and the transparency and the discussions and the trust, et cetera, has been wonderful to work with Kiewit thus far. Just for context, just kind of reminders, if you will, Turtle Creek Station is 225 megawatts. We're adding a turbine there, and then at Cass County Station, 3 dual fuel turbines there as well at 675 megawatts. Our air permit applications are well underway. We've had them filed and anticipate those in mid next year. Next slide, please. Just some additional aspects to this. We have the turbines under contract, and we kind of hit that briefly, but the aspects of these turbines and how they help our system, certainly there's the reliability component, but these are quick resources. These are units that can ramp quickly. They have low minimums, and it helps with the expounding aspects of certainly retiring North Omaha facilities, but it further helps grid support in that respect. And certainly wind and solar facilities can come offline kind of quickly in a non-dispatchable kind of aspect. And so these units provide a lot of backup, if you will, balancing generation for those types of assets as if clouds front comes through, wind picks up, wind dies down, et cetera. So these types of units can pick up and drop off. These types of turbines can pick up and drop off very rapidly. In that regard, not as quick as reciprocating engines, certainly at Sandy Bear Lake Station, but comparatively, fleet-wide, these are very quick units. All right, I think that's it. Mr. Edom.
So Scott is our Director of Production Engineering, and he's going to talk about the excitement that he has with the transition of North Omaha and what's being done. Director Williams, I know this is near and dear to your heart, so.
Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'd like just to give a summary and some additional context to the information on the slides for the work in progress and in support of the future gas conversion at North Omaha Station that also supports operational and environmental permit compliance. So we do have projects that are in progress. For the effluent limitation guideline compliance project, we do expect those materials to be delivered in Q2 of this year, and construction and completion by Q3 of this year for permit compliance by the end. Again, that does allow the extended operation on coal as we need right now. 2024 was a big year. As we brought in December, right, we were seeking approval from the board for installation labor on our Clean Water Act compliant intake water screens. We have been in contact with suppliers and have established one contract already to install some piping during planned spring unit outages. So we're moving forward there. The most exciting part, and I do have some pictures for that on the lower, the two recall for Unit 5. We do need new burners to utilize the full generation capability of Unit 5 on natural gas. We're limited right now based upon the design of those burners to burn coal right now and natural gas as a secondary fuel. So the two lower left pictures on the bottom row, those are the completed burners that were staged at the Italian manufacturing facility last fall. And again, these pictures were as of December. All 12 of those burners have been shipped and are on site in storage, ready for the pending outage. The other two pictures are additional components that we'll need to install to complete the conversion. And again, we're planning for that starting in October of 26 for that outage. And later this year, we'll bring contracts to award for the burner installation. So there's still more to come and a lot of great work done. The time-lapse photography, granted, it's over about 7 months. Back in March, I presented, and it doesn't look like much, but that is the basement at Unit 5. And if you're not familiar, we did a lot of work to remove components and make room for some pretty substantial fans. The center picture there shows where we're going to put them. And then on the final in October, we did mount these fans. They are flue gas recirculation fans, and those specifically are installed to allow for emissions reductions and to optimize the natural gas combustion process. So they're really going to help us optimize and be lower emitting for once we convert. Again, it's a pretty substantial change. The fact that we had to do those installation and tie into operating systems last spring in the outage and then continue the work, it's a great success. So we haven't had any challenges with plant operation, even with all that work going on. We do expect to complete the fan installation, grouting, et cetera, in the spring 2025 planned outage upcoming. So that's what I have, pending questions. So we're on track and definitely making progress. Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. Appreciate the update, as always. On the completed in 2024 ash landfill closure, I received a number of comments from the public about construction activity outside of the building itself. That was the ash landfill closure earthwork that they were seeing, correct?
Yes.
And then ash landfill closure, that means all cells at North Omaha are now closed and we do not have a landfill at North Omaha anymore. Is that correct? Or is it?
We closed in multiple phases. We are now transporting the combustion product, the ash off-site to a secondary landfill. We do have storage buildings that we do in case that flow off-site gets disrupted, but yes, the landfill is closed as of now.
Great, appreciate that. And I know there were, like I said, public comments and questions, and thanks to everybody who helped answer those, people who live in the area and saw things happening and weren't sure. So I'm glad to hear that that's been completed as well as all the other work. Again, thanks very much. As Troy mentioned, this is a point of specific interest for me, so I appreciate the updates as the work continues.
On that topic, I'll mention really quick. So the landfill was closed with a flake cap in September of 2024. Part of the requirement here for the NDE to process the final written approved closure letter includes us making some deed restriction changes on, what land is going to be used for, the restricted asset, for monitoring the landfill, et cetera. The ash landfill occupies about 18 acres. 12 of those acres are ours, and we've already completed all the deed restriction notifications. We have the authority from the board, and it aligns with our SD7. 6 of those acres is leased land that belongs to MUD. And MUD has a slightly different process, and so we're expecting they're going to take this to their board, and I'm sharing these just for awareness. We expect that to happen in February for them to approve the change in the deed restrictions so that we can complete the closure of the land. So just sharing here with transparency, if you hear about the MUD board taking these action, it's related to the.
Glad to hear we've got strong collaboration with MUD.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
From the agenda, there is one additional item. Before we adjourn, we will take comments from the public on items of district business. Comments made by all parties during the meeting are part of the official public record. We will take comments in the room first and via WebEx. Do we have anyone in person who would like to make comments today?
No.
No. Great. Thank you. For WebEx attendees, if you wish to make a comment, please send the meeting host a message using the chat feature or utilize the hand raise feature. Detailed instructions can be found on the OPPD website at the link shown on the screen. When I call on a member of the public to speak, please confirm that we can hear you before commencing with your comments. Please state your name, address, and the name of any organization or person you represent. Each individual will be allotted 3 minutes per matter pending. To assist you, we'll use the timer on screen and signal when you have 30 seconds remaining, as well as when time is up. If you have written materials, please email them to corporatesecretary@oppd.com, and they will be received on our behalf. For all attendees, please direct your comments to me. I will either respond to you directly or defer response to another board member or officer of the district. Board values and welcomes civil, respectful, clear, and concise communication from the public. During public comments, speakers should refrain from repetitious, profane, or irrelevant comments. Speakers shall refrain from pulling the board as such vote is not on the agenda and is prohibited by law. Do any members of the public wish to make comments on items of district business at this time?
David Corbin.
Can you hear me?
If you can, please go ahead.
Okay, it's my first time using it on the phone. David Corbin, 1002 North 49th Street, representing the Nebraska Sierra Club. I was glad to see the report on product services, the update, and I want to just reiterate what I've said before. We can help, the Sierra Club and other organizations that we partner with can help to spread the word, and it would be good, as I've said before, to have infographics to help people understand what's available and who the contacts are. I was also wondering, is this program, are the programs that were mentioned in that also available to future building projects? And if they are, how is the word being spread to those contractors? I do want to mention that the slides for the new generation and transmission update were not online, so I hope that they will be online soon. Then I just have one question regarding the coal ash being taken to an offsite landfill. What landfill is what I'd like to know the answer to. Thank you.
So
You can confirm that. Location later.
sorry, so David, we will get you an answer on the transport of the coal ash landfill. And then as far as the slides on new generation and transmission, yes, I assume those will be posted online as they usually are in the board meeting or the committee meeting records. So yes, thank you for your comments and we will get you answers about those questions that you have. Are there any other comments online?
No more comments.
Great, that is the end of our agenda. So with that, we are adjourned at 12:10 p.m. Thanks, everybody.